Welcome to This Explainer, everyone. Let's jump right into a massive cultural obsession today. If you've stepped foot in a bookstore lately, or honestly, just talked to any friends who love to read, you've probably noticed the sheer ubiquity of Freida McFadden. She is absolutely dominating the thriller genre right now. Today, we're going to decode this phenomenon together by digging into one of her most gloriously unhinged releases, Dear Debbie.
Okay, let's dive into this inescapable reality. Why is absolutely everyone reading Freida McFadden right now? I mean, it feels like we're all living in a collective Freida McFadden phase. Group chats are blowing up about her, readers are binging her entire catalog back to back, and you literally can't turn around without spotting one of her paperbacks. But to really figure out the secret sauce behind this explosive popularity, we need to listen to what her biggest fans are actually saying.
And this brilliant quote from the popular reviewer Peter Likes Books perfectly captures the central paradox of the whole experience. He says, "She is so bad, but I cannot stop listening to it." And honestly, that brutally honest take hits the nail on the head. People readily admit the objective flaws. The character development isn't exactly Shakespeare, the plots are wildly unbelievable, but they are totally, utterly captivated. You just can't stop.
A huge part of this phenomenon is just how ridiculously accessible these books are to consume in book. Take a recent Audible vacation sale, for example. Her audiobooks dropped down to this $2 to $4 sweet spot. So what happens when highly addictive thrillers are priced the same as your morning cup of coffee? Readers, just like Peter, literally buy every single Freida McFadden book available on the platform. It creates this super low barrier entry to a binge reading habit that is incredibly hard to break.
And when we say binge, we mean it. These books are the absolute definition of unputdownable. Peter noted that it took exactly 7.5 hours to consume one of her novels entirely in a single day. Think about that. You pop it on while you're walking the dog, doing some laundry, running errands, and boom, before you know it, you've devoured the entire story. It's an immersive, all-consuming ride that grabs you from minute one and does not let go.
Section 1, Anatomy of a Thriller. Now, what's really interesting here is the stark contrast between what the critics say and why the audience actually shows up. On one side, sure, we have the critiques, stories that definitely defy logic and feature some pretty weak character development. But on the other side, that is the ultimate hook. We are talking literal page-turners, offering pure escapist fun. Listen, readers aren't cracking these open for a profound life lesson. They are showing up to be entertained, and McFadden delivers that in spades.
In fact, diving into these books evokes a very specific, nostalgic feeling. It's like a time machine back to those trashy, guilty pleasure pulp novels you might have passed around with your friends in high school. You know the exact ones I'm talking about. They aren't high art, you aren't going to learn anything educational, but the drama is just so juicy that you're glued to the page anyway.
And of course, all of this builds up to her absolute signature move, the Freida McFadden twist. The funny thing is, you can usually figure out the initial mystery halfway through the book, but then comes the ending. The twist is an incredibly unrealistic, logic-defying third-act reveal. I mean, we're talking about a secret identical twin who went to prison, identified only by a matching mole right after the main character poisoned the wrong person, kinda crazy. It completely defies logic, but it's exactly what leaves readers screaming and texting their friends.
Section 2, Enter Dear Debbie.
Let's ground ourselves with some quick stats on this specific case study. Dear Debbie clocks in at a very brisk, highly readable 322 pages, carrying a 2026 publication year. Our protagonist is Debbie Mullen, and at first glance, she is a sympathetic advice columnist for a local Massachusetts newspaper. She's the listening ear for the wives of New England who are dealing with being ignored, belittled, or abused by their husbands.
But actually, scratch that sympathy for a second, because Debbie's life is about to go completely off the rails. It starts with this hilarious, inciting incident. After years of doling out perfectly reasonable, practical advice, Debbie finally snaps. She is fired from her newspaper job on the spot. Why? Because she gives a reader the absolute worst, most extreme neighborly advice possible in her column. She literally tells someone, in print, to kill your husband.
And losing her job, that is just the tip of the iceberg. This downward spiral is breathtaking. On the exact same day she gets fired, her loser accountant husband up and quits his job just because he didn't get a promotion. Then, a tracking app reveals he's having an affair with a gym friend named Harley. Meanwhile, one teenage daughter is trapped in a toxic relationship, while her younger daughter is unfairly kicked off her soccer team over her weight. Oh, and a nasty neighbor steals her spotlight in a gardening magazine feature before accusing Debbie of ruining their house wiring. It is absolute, suffocating chaos from all sides.
Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds into a recipe for revenge.
From here, the tone shifts into something deliciously dark and comical. Peter aptly compares the vibe to the classic Kathleen Turner dark comedy, Serial Mom. It has that exact same energy. It's a story where the protagonist starts acting out the darkest impulses we all might occasionally have when pushed to the absolute brink, but she gets to operate in a world where consequences simply don't exist. She does these terrible, subtle things to get payback, and it turns into this delightful consequence-free joyride for the reader.
To really give you a taste of Debbie's unhinged genius, we have to talk about one specific scene. Debbie has to attend this snobby book club where the women just constantly put her down. So she decides to bring along Harley, the very same woman having an affair with her husband. The night before, Debbie casually asks Harley this incredibly innocent-sounding question. "I'm taking sandwiches. Is there anything you're allergic to?"
And Harley, completely unsuspecting, answers honestly. She hands over her one distinct weakness, the only thing she is allergic to: avocados. Debbie files that crucial piece of information right away. As a reader, you can immediately feel the suspense and the dark comedy ratcheting up.
So what does our protagonist do with this information? Well, step 1, she makes the avocado sandwiches. Step 2, she brings them to this catered, snobby book club where the women immediately mock her homemade contribution. But here's the real kicker for step 3. Debbie plays it off to Harley like a terrible accident, acting horrified that she forgot the allergy. In reality, she tampered with the food to such an extent that every single woman who looked down on her gets violently ill. She poisons every single woman there. And incredibly, Peter notes this is actually one of the weakest crazy things that happens in the entire book.
Which brings us to our final stop, Section 4, the final verdict.
Peter ends up giving this book a very solid 4 out of 5 stars. That massive 80% chunk you're seeing, that is pure appreciation for what a genius, satisfying tale of revenge this is. The only reason it missed out on a perfect 5-star score is simply because it didn't profoundly change his life. It's an incredibly fun ride, but at the end of the day, it stays true to those escapist pulp novel roots we talked about earlier.
But when we zoom out and place it in the larger context of the Freida McFadden universe, things get genuinely surprising. Her mega hit, The Housemaid, gets widespread praise as an intricately designed, well-constructed thriller. Yet Dear Debbie, with its comical, completely unhinged energy, goes toe-to-toe with it. For many hardcore readers like Peter, this bizarre revenge tale actually ties for first place as their absolute favorite McFadden read so far.
Now you might be wondering why we didn't cover Debbie's final, jaw-dropping backstory or the ultimate ending twist. Well, that's intentional. You really have to experience the sheer lunacy of a McFadden ending for yourself. So I'll leave you with this question. If you ventured into this wild literary phenomenon, what is your all-time favorite Freida McFadden twist? Think about it, because once you're on the Freida train, there's really no getting off. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep turning those pages.